are on Shabbat, Perek Gimel, Mishnah Gimel, third Mishnah in the third chapter of Shabbat. Now, our Mishnah is something that a lot of people are not aware of, discusses the topic of what heat sources are asur, are prohibited in order to cook on Shabbat. And you'll think to yourself, all heat sources are asur. As long as you have heat and you add food, then you're cooking. That is technically not true. Okay, something that people don't know. Let me do another huge chart, because that's what I do. Let's say you have the sun, chama, and I want to cook in the sun. The example, dugma, lahashir beitza b'shemesh. I want to put an egg out in the sun. I happen to live in, I don't know, Eilat, and I stick the egg out in the sun. It's going to cook a little bit. I'm not Rocky Balboa. I don't like my eggs totally raw. I want them a little bit cooked. Can I fry my egg in the sun? Halacha is mutar lebashel b'shemesh. It's not asur to fry your egg in the sun, directly in the sun. Why? Okay. Rashi says, based on the Rashi in Masechet Shabbat Daf Lamed Aleph, okay, share, it's permitted in the shemesh. De'ein derech bishulo bekach. People don't cook that way. It's not considered cooking. For whatever reason and in whatever way, cooking in the sun, direct sunlight, is not considered cooking. So therefore, it's permitted. I don't know anybody's ever done it, but what can you do? So now, our Mishnah is going to deal with the question of, okay, if the sun is permitted, what about the question of toldat hachama? Toldat hachama means, what if the sun heated up something else? Now, and so that thing is warm through direct sunlight. Can I cook on that thing or not? And that's a machloket in our Mishnah. So we'll do the Mishnah. This is the Mishnah. Ein notnim beitza b'tzad mecham b'shvir shetit galgel. Before we get to the Toldat HaChama, first we're going to have something called, let me go back a bit, okay, I'm sorry. On the other hand, we have what's called Esh, or fire. Everybody knows cooking in fire is asur, so that's the Oraita. Okay, but then we also have a question of Toldat Ta'or. If I take something and I warm it up on the fire, and then I take it off the fire, the Mishnah is going to say now that's Toldat Ta'or, and you're not allowed to cook in that either. That's also Isur and Isur de Oraita. Ein nonim beitza b'tzada mecham. I have a mecham. Mecham is essentially a steaming kettle. So I take the steaming kettle and I left it on from before Shabbat. I'm allowed to leave it on. Remember, it's water and whatever, and it's fully cooked, etc., etc. So I'm allowed to do that. So now I say I can't, of course, cook on the fire. So I take my kettle off, okay, and I say, well, I'm going to take my food and I have a steaming kettle, and I'll stick it on the steaming kettle. Here, there's no fire. I'm just cooking on top of the kettle. What's the problem with that? Says the Mishnah, asur. You're not allowed to do that. That's what the Mishnah says. You cannot put an egg next to the steaming kettle in order to titgalgel. Titgalgel means that it rolls. Why does it roll? Because the egg boils, because it cooks a little bit. That's the Mishnah terminology for titgalgel. Why? What is that? Okay? That is called Toldat Ha'esh. In Toldat, let's go over my chart for a second. That's called Toldat Ha'or, Toldat Ha'esh. Okay? And that's the example of the Mishnah, the Galgel B'tzad HaMecham, Asur. That's Bishul Deoraita. Because why? Toldat Ha'or, Hareu Ki Eish Atzmo. That's what the Mishnah says. That's not a machloket. What about the next case? V'lo yafki'ena b'sudarim. A sudar is a handkerchief. So let's look at the Bartunura for a second. Okay, lo yishberena. I cannot break my egg. I'll sudar on a handkerchief or a garment of some kind. Shehu cham b'chama. You warmed it in the sun. Kadesh titzlebo. So again, apparently one way that they cooked in the time of the Mishnah, or you could do it. You would take a cloth. You would stick it out in the sun. You lived in Beersheba. The cloth, let's say if it's a black cloth, and it would absorb a ton of heat. And then you would take the egg and you would open up the egg in the cloth. And that's lafkiena b'sudarim. That's not Toldat Ha'esh. What is that? That's Toldat Ha'chama. Lafkia beitza besudar. That's called Toldat Ha'chama. Okay, so now the question is, well, if I can cook in the sun itself, can I cook in Toldat Ha'chama? So the Mishnah says, Lo yafki ena besudarim. I'm not allowed to open it up. Rabbi Yossi matir. Rabbi Yossi says you can. Why does Rabbi Yossi say that? Okay, because the Bartunura says the following. The Tanakama holds Gazrinan Toldat Chama. Ato toldo ta'or. I have this cloth. The person looking at it, does he know whether I heated the cloth in the sun or I heated the cloth on the fire? Let's say I heated the cloth, I had a fire and I left it near the fire and it warmed it up. That's toldo ta'or. That's Isur Bishul Deoraita. Does he know whether I did it in the sun or not? So Rabbi Yosef, Tanakama says yes. Tanakama says he doesn't know. So therefore goes there. Rabbi Yossi matir. Rabbi Yossi says, no, it's permitted. Why? Savar lo gazvina toldat chama atu toldat. We don't make the gzeira of toldat chama. We don't pass the Rabbi Yossi. Next case. V'lo yatminena b'chol u'be'avak drachim b'shvil tzetitzaleh. So I say, okay, I can't use it in this sudar. What happens? I have some dirt, chol or avak drachim. I have sand or avak drachim or dirt from the road, and I'm going to yatminena. I'm going to stick my egg. I'm going to take my I take my lemon and stick it into the chol b'shvil tzetitzaleh, so that it'll become roasted because it's very hot outside. So am I allowed to? It's warm because of the sun. Okay, so the Bartenura says huchmu mikoach hachama. So that also was warned by the sun. So that, of course, the Tanakama says you're not allowed to, because told that Chamas out to told it or. But the Baratunur says ubeha in this lo shari Rabbi Yossi. Even Rabbi Yossi does not permit. Okay, to gazar chol atu remetz, because in this case there's one of two possibilities. First of all, there was something called remetz. Remetz was a certain kind of coal that they had. It was a remetz was warmed up. It was like, I guess, the leftovers from the oven, and they would take it out and they would use it to cook. That's ish. So Rabbi Yossi was afraid if you allowed them to use this to hatmin, to dig into the chol, it would bring to remetz. Or inami, the reason is shema yaziz afar. Maybe you move the afar and it's muktzah. You're not allowed to do that. It's tolda de choresh, not muktzah. Excuse me. It's a tolda. It's a subcategory of choresh, of plowing. So for whatever reason, even Rabbi Yossi agreed in this case. Lo yatmenu b'chol u'be'avak drachim. What do we learn from here? We learned, okay, chama mutar, or fire and any derivative thereof, anything heated in the or, that's bishul, iser d'oraita. Toldat chama is a machloket. I'm going to end by adding one more really important point that's very much relevant to halacha, even though we're not paskening to this Mishnah. It's very relevant in Israel in today's day and age. Okay, and that is what's called a dud shemesh, bishul b'chama. So this is actually from the Machon Somet website. Maybe they have it in English, I don't know. Okay, and there's an article here. You can see the link. You can see the link here. Okay, there's an article about this idea, bishul b'chama, and they write about the issue of a dud shemesh. So those of you who've ever been to Israel know the dud shemesh is a fascinating thing because the cold water, a dud shemesh adds in cold water. It's actually brilliant. There's no electricity whatsoever, and it uses the principle of physics. The water enters the dud on the lowest point. And then, because the sun heats up these elements to a pretty high temperature, the water then begins to rise in temperature. And as it rises in temperature, it moves up and up and up and up, all through a natural process, and then it's returned to the dud. It's returned to the dud shemesh. Fascinating. Whoever designed this thing, absolutely brilliant. Okay, I don't know why they don't have this in the American Southwest, but whatever. Okay, in Israel, it's all over the place, probably in the entire Middle East. Is this halachically? Is this chama? Or is it toldat hachama? Meaning, is the water directly being heated, and therefore you're allowed to use the hot water, or is it toldat hachama, and we paskin you're not allowed to use toldat hachama al to toldat ha'esh? That's a huge machloket. I'm not here to paskin. I'm just here to show you that this is something of great relevance to our Mishnah that we learned, because if it's chama, then you can use the water from the dud shemesh. If it's toldat hachama, then you got a problem. I'll share with you from Pninei Halacha. This is Rabbi Lamad's website, and he has a whole section about dud shemesh. He says some say it's asur. Some say it's asur because the mayim are heated from the ezrat koltim, the receptacles, and that's toldat chama. Okay, and he quotes the Shmirat Shabbat Kilchata. Some say, he says, you can use the water from the dud shemesh. Why? Because it's zenechshav chinum b'shemesh atzma. Okay, and the koltim are only helping in order to focus the dud shemesh. Okay, the Tzitz Eliezer quotes Rav Frank Hartzvi. Rav Melamed Paskins lema'aseh, because it's talking about a machloket chachamim. Okay, and he says sveika de rabbanan lekula. A person can be mekel and use water that was warmed with the dud shemesh on Shabbat. Va'machmir atzmo tavo alav bracha. And if you want to be machmir, you could. Now, this brings a real problem because sometimes you have to know: what if the water was heated up, toldat ha'or? What if you turned on the dud shemesh before Shabbat? So sometimes the water in the dud shemesh is toldat ha'chama, and sometimes it's toldat ha'or, and that's why we have rabbis. We'll stop here. If you have any comments or questions, as always, feel free to contact me at rspolter@gmail.com, and we'll dedicate the learning to the memory of my father, Rav Simcha ben Yitzchak Kalman. Have a great day.